I'm a henchman, baby. And henchmen sing the blues. I'm a henchman, baby. And I'll only sing for you. Reviews. Review more stuff, OGGM. We want to see you review more stuff. Reviewing stuff is hard because that costs money, which I don't have. So I got to review stuff I have in my collection first, and then when that's all done, we'll start looking at other things to review. So we're going through all my PDFs, and we're starting with superheroes because superheroes are my favorite topic, which means I've got to review this because I wrote it, and it's a perfect chance for me to try and shill some of my product. Plus, it's also a perfect chance for me to be very, very self-reflective and talk about what I did right, what I did wrong, and where I think the product line is going, and what I think about, my year of working within the, let's face it, controversial Red Room with Miguel and Sylvia. Now, don't get me wrong, I am unbelievably grateful that they have allowed me to play around with the Wretched system and create this stuff, and I'm unbelievably grateful and unbelievably surprised by the amount of people who actually have enjoyed the Henchmen Sing the Blues Wretched VIgilantes trilogy. Now, honestly, I never wrote this to be part of Wretched because there's no actual rules in the Wretched VIgilantes core book. You have to have Wretched core rules first, and then you have to have this book, and then you can buy all the supplements. So from the very beginning, I was writing a source book that just happened to be set in this world, happened to be using these rules, but I wrote it so that it could be used for any superhero game. And I know that Miguel really wanted it very dark and bloody and Frank Miller, and that's kind of went a different way. And when I started writing it, I wanted it to be closer to Limitless and Lucy and some of the more TV type, super type characters we've seen where they're just, they're not guys in masks. They're just dudes who happen to have enhanced, but it kind of got away from itself and became this completely different thing. And I'm very surprised at the story that it grew into. Now, apologies to anybody who purchased Henchmen Sing the Blues, and I'm grateful that you've purchased it, but you will notice that there are some chunks missing. And I looked through the PDF twice. I looked through the physical copy, and yeah, there's stuff I wrote that isn't in there, but there are references to it. So I don't know what happened. I don't know if I just forgot to send it to Miguel. I don't know if Miguel forgot to put it in. I don't know if there's some problem with the translation into the comptometer when Miguel created it, but there are definitely stuff that is not in there that was meant to be in there, and I don't know where it went. So I don't know how I'm going to fix that. They might show up as a freebie that I'll do and put on Wretched or something. But yeah, I apologize. But that said, I think it tells a really good story. The beginning, middle, and end of the Wretched VIgilantes universe. And as I have said many times, this was written to be the end. If Miguel decided he never wanted to explore this stuff again, because at the end of the day, it is Miguel and Sylvia's thing. If he said, don't do this anymore, it's not working for us. That's how I wrote it. I wrote it that this could be the end. But apparently it was way more popular than I expected. And so now I am writing the fourth book in the trilogy and then starting something else. I don't know what, but yeah. After this, the Wretched VIgilantes verse might be done. And I might be starting the Wretched Supers verse, where we talk about the rest of the world and how the three, the major plot lines sort of interconnect. Because it's established that Wretched VIgilantes at least takes place in the same world that Wretched New Flesh takes place in. And there's a major crossover between Wretched New Flesh and the organizations in Wretched New Flesh, including the Warden Foundation, and of course, Wretched VIgilantes, which is all starts with and ends with the Warden Foundation. The Warden Foundation also play a huge part in the world of Wretched Darkness. So obviously there is a connection between Wretched VIgilantes and Wretched Darkness. which I kind of explore in the third book. I definitely explore the true story of the Wretched Vigilante universe through the eyes of Wretched Darkness, and finally, acknowledge the presence of the hinted at Devourer and how the influence of the Beyond shaped that world. And I, with the book I'm working on now, which right now is called Wretched Supermax, because I don't have a better name for it, what I'm trying to do is then, show you how Wretched Conspiracy, Wretched New Flesh, Wretched Darkness, and Wretched Vigilante all take place in the same world, and all, which of course I also have to answer the question, well, if they do, how come nobody ever interfered with Hamlettville? Which is pretty obvious. It's because the Devourer didn't want you to. So the first bad thing I'm going to say about this, it is not enough art. It is just walls and walls of text. I should have done more art. And the second thing, basically it's more of a story, and it goes through the entire history of Hamlettville as told through the eyes of the Warden Foundation and told through the eyes of the Wretched Vigilante universe. So it reads more like a book than a game. It's definitely a source book. These were all, like I said, meant to be a source book for any superhero role-playing game that happened to use D20, or even not. You could ignore the D20 rules and just set your stuff in this world. And I really, really, really wanted to try and, balance the ridiculousness of superheroes and the utter ridiculousness of characters like Tag and Kid Sidekick and Talking Monkeys with the technology of today and how the rest of the world might or might not react to superheroes. And then, of course, I explored the whole history with this. But again, the main problem being not enough art and lots and walls of text. And I should have probably also included more examples. But yeah, just here we go. It's just blah, 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 blah. Just text. Elvis shows up a lot on this. Why did I put Elvis in this? I don't know. I just did. I thought he would fit. So Elvis is still alive in the Wretched universe. And I explain why in the new book. And here we have the new songs. We have the Henchmen Blues. And then we've got, of course, connections. Here's the first hint that it does connect to the rest of the world. We've got, Prometheus and Area 51, Prometheus and crime, and then just how the world is changing. It updates you on all the characters in each timeline. I did this thing where I, did chunks of real world stuff at that point in time, which, I think is something that if you're going to do a real world crossover book set in any point in time on Earth, you have to acknowledge the actual events that were going on in that time period. It's like, who was the president? What was the number one selling video game? What was the number one story in that year? And then we've got some organizations, including some new organizations. We've got some crossover organizations from Wretched New Flesh. We've got how the drug worked. One thing I didn't explain is how does it work? How do we, how do these people turn into superheroes? How the fuck does a super soldier formula work? You give Cap a couple injections, you expose him to solar radiation, and suddenly he's, it's never explained. Then we have the team as they look back then, back when they were young in the 80s, including some we mentioned, but you never saw. Because, in the first book, by the time we reached where the first book is taking place in the timeline, a lot of these characters are dead. Some of these characters were ideas were suggested by you guys. There's Ape X, Parrot and Pants, who was created by my niece. Some of the uplifted animal characters, Rainbow Snake, also created by my niece. Anthropomorphic Armadillo Assassin for all you Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle characters. Again, you can see that I really wrote it more as a source book. Some more bad guys. Tentacle Cow, because Tentacle Cow's got to show up everywhere. Some adventure ideas for each of the characters. Then we move on just to every chunk of year, 1990 to 1990. and how the world changes with supers, how the characters age, how their lives have changed, in a world that doesn't really know what to do with superheroes and supervillains, and how this is affecting the rest of the world, and how is this affecting the world of Wretched Vigilantes, Wretched New Flesh, Wretched Conspiracy, Wretched Darkness. Would of course mention that around now is in the time period is where Wretched New Flesh kind of ends, because Wretched New Flesh is 80s and 90s, and I go past that. I go into the 2000s with the Wretched Vigilante storyline, which connects more with Conspiracy and Darkness and Mirage City. So we start mentioning those areas, and we start kind of getting away from the storyline of Wretched New Flesh. And again, it just kind of reads more like it's a book. It's a book with some rules in it. It's a source book. And explore again. Here's Elvis again with the new song, with another Elvis song. Our connection with Area 51, what was going on in the world, how the drug worked, how the experiments work, stuff like that. Why they did this, what came out of it. Some good AI art. And of course, again, you're probably like, hi, I don't remember seeing these characters in the original book. And that's because, yeah, they are all dead by the time we get to the night where the original book starts. I start tying characters together and stories together. We introduce, of course, Kid Sidekick, our main hero. And of course, Candy, our immortal girl, our narrator. If you guys remember when Miguel and Sylvia first, the only time Miguel and Sylvia has ever interviewed me, or we've talked about this, and when I was talking about the very first book, and I said, who is the author? Because this is obviously, somebody's writing all this from the point of view of they've already been through it. And I said, it's probably her. It's probably Candy, because she's immortal. So, 100 years from now, when she's still alive and the world's a post-apocalyptic nightmare of wretched apocalypse, somebody's going to have to be around to write the story. And then I hint at that again when I talk about Edge in the second book and how she would keep Candy X alive. She's the only one that would keep that hero alive because she likes the idea that 100 years from now, someone's still going to be alive to tell the story of Edge. So yeah, she's her girl. She's our narrator. Gadget Girl, inspired by my niece. Some of the other characters who die horrible, painful deaths. More of the corruption of the Warden organization. Another thing I really wanted to explore in these walls of text is, wow, maybe the Warden organization isn't as nice as they are made out to be. Maybe they are just as bad as all the organizations they claim they're trying to fight. So yeah, the Warden organization is actually kind of scummy. They're kidnapping kids and experimenting on them. Now, somewhere in here was supposed to be an adventure called Panic at Police Plaza, but I don't know where it is, so I'm going to have to include it somewhere else for you guys. And then we get to the 2000s, which, right, we're now past the timeline of New Flesh, and we're getting into the timeline of Mirage City and Darkness and Conspiracy, and how the world is changing and reacting and stuff like that. And it's just more of the same. Got the characters as they age, how the world changes, how the law changes. We introduce some of the characters that we're familiar with from the first book. Got another song by Elvis. We introduced the first Supermax, what the world was like. Again, I really like this. This was one of my favorite parts, was the research, just the research, the amount of stuff I learned to create this. And more games that are set in historical periods really need to do this. Let you know what was going on in 1950s France or whatever. Some adventure ideas. Yeah, just more of the same. What the world is like at this point in time, with how the characters are. There's an adventure in here called Halloween in Hammetville, which sort of explains why superheroes don't age and supervillains don't age, and introduces a interesting side project that I never really followed up with. Here it is, Halloween in Hamville. It's basically Puck from Midsummer's Night Dream shows up in Hammetville in this adventure and takes offense that the superheroes are comparing themselves to, you know, Greek gods and fairies and stuff like that. So on Halloween, Puck does the classic comic book, going to turn you all into kids. The entire city's turned into kids, and you have to midnight Halloween to do a certain amount of tasks to prove to me you're worthy of calling yourselves heroes. And if you don't, you're going to stay as kids forever. So, and then I had a whole bunch of character sheets that for each of the characters as kids, and I don't know where they went. They're not here. I don't know if I forgot to send them, or he forgot to put them in, or he just decided it wasn't taking up too much space. Then we have Night of the Dire Turkey, because, you know, Thanksgiving, you got to have a giant turkey adventure. We got some other adventures. We've got some stories in here. I wrote some fiction, and that brings us up to where we are today in the universe where the next book takes place. And then I've got new powers in here, some new rules in here. Yeah, I'm okay with it. I'm happy with it. I'm happy, you know, like I said, if this was the end, if it was done, I think I wrote a beginning, middle, and end for this source books. And I wrote it in such a way that you could pick it up and use it in any superhero game, whether you were playing Wretched or not. But I also tied it into Wretched, and I also tried very hard to make it that if you wanted to continue, there were openings. And if it didn't want to continue, I told a complete beginning, middle, end story of this city and of how the world is reacting to these super beings and where do these super beings come from. And like I said, I'm very grateful because this was way more popular than I thought it was going to be. And so that leaves me writing a fourth book, which is right now, as I said, called Wretched Supermax, which deals with the prisons. Where do you put a ghost once you've captured it? Where do you put a fire elemental once you've captured it? Where do you put an alien once you've captured it? Where do you put a supervillain? You can't put them in jail. You can't put them in the Ventura County lockup. They'll escape. You got to have a special place for these things. And you would think that if these creatures have been around for as long as they have in the Wretched universe, there probably would be a place. And you know what? Area 52 is a real place, and you'll find out a lot about it in the next book. So yeah, I appreciate the amount of stuff I had to learn to do this. Really, really just hours of me looking shit up to figure out, you know, where these places were and what they would be like. And, you know, how much weight could this thing take and stuff like that. Yeah. I don't know if you really see that, but if you really read through this, you can see the amount of shit I actually confirmed. I'm not going to throw facts out there or throw references out there if I didn't go through and confirm it, because I wouldn't want somebody to come back and go, dude, this is a total lie. That's not where that is. So yeah, there we go. There's my review of something I wrote. I think it's okay. I don't think it's great. There are definitely better superhero source books out there. I think there was something people wanted it to be, and I think it still kind of falls short. I think people maybe wanted it to be darker, grittier, bloodier, more Watchmen. And I kind of went for more, you know, CW Arrowverse, where it isn't all black and white. I really don't like deconstructing the genres. I don't like deconstructing superheroes. I don't like deconstructing fantasy, which is, you know, what Wretched is all about, is making these worlds and these genres and making them wretched bastards, making them ugly, deconstructing the mythology, which is fine for some. But when it comes to supers, I don't like that. So it was very hard for me to deconstruct these characters and these archetypes and turn them into bastards. And I think in some areas I succeeded, in a lot of areas I failed. I think it just kind of reads more like a late 1970s, early 1980s comic book, before the Iron Age, before the Frank Miller stuff. So in that case, I know, I mean, maybe people are disappointed, but, you know, it's sold better than I wanted it to. And Miguel says he wants to see more, so I guess it's not a complete failure. So I hope you all enjoyed it. So that's me reviewing my stuff, and damn, this needed more art. It's just walls and walls of text. Yeah, so there you go. And then look at this, 3, 4 pages of 5 pages, 6 pages of footnotes. maps, and then there's references to maps, but they don't know what the references are because that chunk is missing. And there's Tag saying goodbye. Our mascot. Don't worry, she'll be back. You didn't think you got rid of Tag that easily. Till next time, thanks for asking me to do reviews. Hopefully you appreciate this. If you haven't picked up the Wretched VIgilantes 4 books yet, and they're on Lulu, both ebook and POD. They're on the Red Room website, PDF. They're on Giant Slayer Games PDF. They're on Big Geek Emporium PDF. I get a small percentage whenever you buy one, so thank you for buying them. Yeah, and thank you for supporting me in my time with the Red Room, and hopefully we can continue to work together. Till next time, stay wretched. See ya!